I used to think our marriage was unshakable. 7 years of shared laughter, quiet mornings over coffee, and the comfortable rhythm of two lives moving in tandem had convinced me we were immune to the fractures that broke other couples. My wife, Lynn, had always been my anchor, graceful, warm, and endlessly patient. And yet, in recent months, I began to notice something I couldn't quite name. It was in the way her smile didn't linger as long, the way her laughter seemed more polite than genuine. She spoke less at dinner, her gaze often fixed on the flicker of her phone screen. I told myself it was work stress, that everyone had seasons of distraction. But the truth was simpler and more dangerous. We were drifting. I wasn't innocent in this slow erosion. My job had swallowed me whole. Late nights at the office became normal. Weekend calls felt unavoidable. I prided myself on providing for us, convincing myself that my absence was for her benefit. But each time I came home to a cold plate left in the microwave, I felt a faint echo of something slipping away. Friends still called us the perfect couple. We knew how to smile for photos, to hold hands in public, to tell charming stories about our first date. But behind closed doors, the easy intimacy had dulled. I no longer reached for her hand without thinking. She no longer leaned her head on my shoulder while we watched television. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't a betrayal. It was silence, and silence can be far more dangerous. One evening, after a day of endless meetings, I found her sitting on the couch with the soft glow of her phone lighting her face. She didn't notice me at first. Her expression was gentle, almost wistful, before she looked up and gave me the kind of smile you offer a stranger in passing. "Long day?" she asked. I nodded, kissed her forehead, and told her I was going to shower. But that look, that quiet, private softness, lingered in my mind. Who was on the other end of the screen? And why did she seem lighter in those moments than when she was with me? I didn't ask. Perhaps I didn't want the answer. A week later, I mentioned a business trip. A 2-day conference out of town, back late Friday. She nodded, told me to be safe, and offered to pack my favorite shirt. There was no protest, no sign she'd miss me. I left that morning with a suitcase in one hand and an uneasy weight in my chest. I didn't know it yet, but that trip and my unexpected return would be the night everything changed. At the time, I thought I was simply leaving for work. In reality, I was walking straight into a moment that would strip away the comfortable illusions of our marriage and force us to face the truth neither of us had dared to speak. The conference was canceled at the last minute, a sudden schedule reshuffle that left me standing in the hotel lobby with a suitcase and a decision. Most of my colleagues took the opportunity to spend the night in the city. I chose differently. A quiet voice inside me urged, "Go home." I told myself it was to surprise Lynn, to break the monotony. But deep down, I think I wanted answers to questions I'd been too afraid to ask. The drive back was long, the highway lined with a faint shimmer of streetlights. I stopped at a small bakery and bought her favorite dessert, soft pandan cake wrapped in banana leaves, imagining the way her eyes used to light up over small gestures. The thought almost made me smile. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the house was cloaked in darkness. The porch light was off, which was unusual. I unlocked the door quietly, stepping inside with the scent of the cake still warm in my hands. At first, I heard nothing but the faint hum of the refrigerator. Then, from the living room, a murmur of voices, low, steady, intimate. My chest tightened. Lynn's voice was unmistakable, soft in a way I hadn't heard in months. I edged closer, careful not to be seen. The glow from the table lamp spilled across the floor, revealing her seated on the couch, leaning slightly forward. Beside her sat a man I didn't immediately recognize, though his posture spoke of familiarity. His body angled toward hers, his expression open, attentive. They weren't touching, but their closeness carried an unspoken weight. Her smile was warm, alive, a smile I thought I'd lost forever. She laughed at something he said, the sound light and effortless, and in that moment, a sharp ache flared in my chest. I felt like an outsider in my own home. I strained to catch their words. He was telling her a story about the past, something about back in university, and suddenly recognition struck me. An old name from her stories. Min, the classmate she once described as a good friend from years ago. My grip on the cake box tightened. I told myself there was nothing explicitly wrong, no physical betrayal unfolding before my eyes. And yet, the intimacy between them, the easy rhythm of their conversation, the way she looked at him, felt like something I hadn't shared with her in far too long. I stepped back silently, my heartbeat loud in my ears. Without announcing my presence, I walked out into the night, closing the door as quietly as I had opened it. Back in the car, I sat in the dark for a long time, the pandan cake untouched on the passenger seat. Doubt twisted through me, mingling with anger and fear. By morning, I knew I couldn't pretend nothing had happened. But I also knew that confronting her would change everything, and I wasn't sure yet if I was ready for the truth. I barely slept that night. My mind replayed every detail, the lamplight on her face, the warmth in her smile, the way she leaned toward him. By sunrise, the silence between us felt heavier than any argument we'd ever had. When Lynn walked into the kitchen that morning, she looked startled to see me at the table so early. "I thought you'd be at the conference," she said, her voice measured, as if testing the air between us. "It was canceled," I replied, keeping my tone even. "I came home instead." Her gaze flickered, just for a second, before she opened the cupboard and busied herself with the coffee. I waited until she set the mugs down before I spoke again. "I saw you last night," I said quietly. The clink of the spoon against porcelain stopped. She looked up, her expression unreadable. "You saw us." "Yes." My voice was calm, but my hands were clenched around the mug. "You and Min. Talking. Laughing." I trailed off, searching for the right word but finding only the one I feared most. "Like I wasn't part of your life anymore." Her lips parted, then closed again. A long silence stretched between us before she finally spoke. "It wasn't what you think." "Then tell me what it was," I said. She exhaled slowly, her shoulders sinking. "I've been lonely," she admitted, her voice trembling. "For months, I've felt like I'm here, but you're somewhere else. You come home tired, distracted. You don't ask about my day. And I didn't know how to tell you without sounding ungrateful." The words hit harder than I expected. "So you turned to him?" "He's an old friend," she said quickly. "Nothing happened. But yes, I felt tempted to confide in him because he listened. He remembered things about me. Things I wasn't sure you even noticed anymore." I sat back, the truth settling over me like a cold shadow. No affair, no scandal, but something perhaps more dangerous. The erosion of intimacy, the quiet shifting of her trust to someone else. "I didn't realize," I murmured. "I thought providing for us was enough." Her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't marry you for provision. I married you for connection. And lately, I've been afraid we've lost it." We sat there for a long time, neither of us speaking. I could feel the fragile thread between us, stretched thin, but not yet broken. "I don't want to lose you, Lynn," I said finally. "If there's still a way back, I'll take it." She looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time in months I saw a glimmer of the woman who had once been my whole world. But I also knew that regaining her trust wouldn't be quick or easy. The night had exposed the cracks in our foundation, and now it was up to us to decide if we'd rebuild, or let it all fall apart. The days that followed were awkward, careful, and strangely quiet. We weren't fighting, but the air between us was thick with unspoken truths. I knew that one conversation wasn't enough to heal months of distance. If I wanted to save our marriage, I would have to do more than apologize. I would have to show her, consistently, that she was still the center of my world. So I began with small things. I left work early to join her for dinner. I asked about her day and listened without glancing at my phone. On weekends, we walked together along the riverside where we used to stroll when we first met. At first, it felt awkward, like learning to dance again after years of forgetting the steps. But slowly, the rhythm returned. One evening, as we sat on the balcony with cups of jasmine tea, Lynn looked out over the city lights and said, almost in a whisper, "I've missed this." It wasn't just the words, it was the softness in her tone, the quiet trust returning. I realized then that love isn't lost all at once. It slips away in small increments, and if you're willing, it can return in the same way. When the anniversary of that night approached, I decided not to let it pass in silence. I made a reservation at a small rooftop restaurant, the kind we used to save for special occasions. She was surprised when I told her to dress up. The night was warm, the city below alive with movement. Candles flickered on our table, and for the first time in what felt like years, she laughed without holding anything back. We talked about the past, not to reopen wounds, but to trace how far we had come. At one point, I took her hand and said, "That night I came home early. I thought I was losing you. But maybe it was the night we began to find each other again." Her fingers tightened around mine. "We both forgot how to be present," she said. "But we're here now. That's what matters." We finished our meal under the stars, the quiet between us no longer heavy, but peaceful. I knew the work wasn't over. Trust doesn't return in a single evening, but the foundation was stronger than it had been in a long time. Later, as we walked back to the car, I realized something important. The hard lesson wasn't just about her loneliness or my neglect. It was about the fragility of love when left unattended, and the strength it gains when both people choose to fight for it. That night didn't just save my marriage. It saved the version of us that was worth holding on to. And as we drove home, her hand in mine, I understood that love wasn't about never stumbling. It was about learning, together, how to stand again.